I'm only human. I'm just a woman. Help me believe in what I could be and all that I am. Show me the stairway one day at a time, one day at a time, sweet Jesus, that's all I'm asking from you. Just give me the strength to do every day what I have to do. Yesterday's gone, sweet Jesus, and tomorrow may never be mine. Lord, help me today, show me the way, one day at a time. Do you remember when you walked among men? Well, Jesus, you know, if you're looking below, it's worse now than then. Pushing and shoving and crowding my mind. So for my sake, teach me to take one day at a time, one day at a time, sweet Jesus, that's all I'm asking from you. Just give me the strength to do every day what I have to do. Yesterday's gone, sweet Jesus, and tomorrow may never be mine. Lord, help me today, show me the way, one day at a time. Psalm 46 says, sing praise to God, sing praise to our King, sing praise. For God is King over all the earth, sing hymns of praise. So this last song is a praise song. Let's all sing together and worship his holy name. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship his holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I'll worship your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day dawning. It's time to sing your song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing when the evening comes. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh 10,000 reasons for my heart to find. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I worship Your holy name. And on that day when my strength is failing, the end draws near and my time has come, still my soul will sing Your praise unending. 10,000 years and then forevermore. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, I worship Your holy name. Yes, I will worship Your holy name. Lord, I'll worship Your holy name. Fan the flame within me, Lord. Bring life to the gifts You've imparted to me. Open my eyes to see evidence of Your glory everywhere I turn. Put faith in my heart to step out, to be a necessary miracle in somebody's life today. And as I wait for my own personal breakthroughs, work through me to help someone else break through to their next place of promise. I love You, Lord. I need You every hour, and I have You every moment of every hour. I'm abundantly blessed. Amen. Amen. Faith, hope, and love. We open today with a couple from our own parish. They were born and raised in Little Chute. They were married here, and over the course of 28 years, raised their family of 4 children. Their story is one of faith in action. They remind us to keep our eyes open to the everyday miracles in our lives. Let us welcome Dan and Terry Reinebold.
Okay, I guess we're right out of the chutes here. We're humbled to be up here. I can't help but think of Keith and Donna Wilson. 5 years ago this weekend, they experienced a life-changing event that our story pales in comparison to what they're going through. And if you're on any prayer chains, you know that the health issues out there, emotional issues, addictions, people are really struggling these days with just issues, but yet we know the end of the story, right? We read the book, we know that we're going to win. So I'm going to tell a story, try and get through it quick, and then Terry's going to go back and do the color commentary. I'll stick to the facts. So this just happened. So we have 4 kids. Our youngest son, Rob, is now a senior at Madison. He had just completed his junior year, came home for a couple weeks in May, and went to an internship in Chicago. Okay, I'll talk a little louder.
Grab it. Okay. Talk right into it.
Okay, sure. I'll start. I'll keep going where I started. So Rob was home for a couple weeks in May. Memorial Day, we brought him to Chicago, starting an internship. Moved in with 2 kids. He had the company put him in with 2 kids. And 5 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, June 22nd, Terry's phone starts to buzz, and it's next to the bed. I look at it, and it's Rob, and he says he was in the bathroom all night and waited till 5 to call us, and was passing blood a lot of blood. And he says a concerning amount of blood. So we immediately, what do you do? We know it's partly serious, and I thought, he just got done with finals, he's starting an internship, passing blood, but he says a concerning amount, and it's running out of him. So I call insurance. He's in Chicago. Where do you send him? He even said, do I call an ambulance? And we're here. So we get in touch with insurance. They call him because he's 21. They can't talk to us about it. And they said they get him into urgent care, which is a good thing. And we stayed in contact all day with Rob. Do we go down there? But no, he's in the system, as Grandpa Randall would have said. And so we were in contact with him. By Friday, they get him into a GI specialist. They know there's something with his gastrointestinal tract. And when we talked to him, he wasn't nervous, but we could sense he was tired. So we didn't go down there because he wasn't nervous. And he said, stay home. And I said, we'll come down and get you, bring you home, sleep in your own bed, have a home-cooked meal. But he had one of his buddies coming down, Sean Whiteman. And this was Rob's time to be in Chicago. We were going to go to a Cubs game. He had all these plans. And we said, okay, it must not be that bad if he wants to stay there and have his buddy come down. But what they did is they booked him into a colonoscopy the next Tuesday, which was the 27th of June, thanks. So now, of course, we got to go down there. He can't do a colonoscopy by himself. He can't travel by himself. So we drive down. He opens the door of his apartment, and we're like, holy cow, Rob. He's white, and he had lost 12 pounds since we dropped him off. He never told us. And he had later said that he hadn't eaten since the Wednesday before, almost a week, because when he ate, he'd immediately throw up or diarrhea. This is not going to be a sexy story. This is non-sexy. So, yeah, thanks. The next 24 days were comprised of what does your bowel movement look like. So when we saw him, we're like, holy cow, Rob, we didn't know. So take him to the colonoscopy. They did that procedure, came right out. The doctor said the colon is 6 feet long. The first 6 inches good. The last 6 inches is good. The 5 feet in between is 90% inflamed. Bleeding, you need to go to the hospital. So, and they kind of thought what was going on, but wouldn't make a diagnosis. They didn't have all the blood data. So they were all doing the right things by the book. They said, we suggest you go to a teaching hospital, an academic hospital like a Madison or Frederick or Northwestern University, which is right downtown, 2 miles away. And we're thinking, we went down there without packing a bag. I really thought they're going to do a colonoscopy, they're going to find out he's got a small ulcer from worrying about tests. They're going to give him a pill. We'll be home at 9 o'clock tonight, I'll be at work the next day. So we went to the hospital in the emergency room, they checked him in, did some tests, and then went ahead and admitted him. And the next morning, which we'll call day 1 in the hospital, we just got his diagnosis, which again is not life-threatening, maybe just life-altering. And this is what we said to our family. Rob was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. It's a treatable disease with medication lifelong. It's an autoimmune disease that will never go away. He will live a very normal life with no limitations besides trial and error with foods that will cause him flare-ups. He'll get occasional flare-ups that could go months or years apart. And their diagnosis was he'll be in the hospital most likely for 3 to 5 days, coming home possibly this weekend. This was a Tuesday. And we said we thank God and the team at Northwestern Memorial Hospital for a very quick and reassuring diagnosis. So now he's in the system, he's going to start the process. IV fluids, he was anemic, dehydrated, and then that started counting. Every day we're supposed to count how many times he goes. By that Friday, day 4 in the hospital, every time he would eat, he would throw up and diarrhea. 20 minutes later or an hour later in the hospital. They moved him from a solid food to a liquid food. That weekend they said, Rob, you're not going home for July 4th. And that brought him back as he had all these plans and he just realized his summer was about to slip away. July 4th, so we're supposed to be home within 3 to 5 days. July 4th is day 7 in the hospital. By then, they had realized IV steroids were not working. He was still passing a lot of blood, not holding down food, losing about a pound a day in the hospital. They had said, we see all these commercials now, Humira, Lialda. He graduated through those pretty quick. They went to Remicade, which they told us is a miracle drug. It's an autoimmune enhancer. It'll modulate his system. The steroids build up the tissue. Remicade will help his immune system. So they gave him that, and he said 3 to 5 days he'll be home. So we keep hearing the same thing, 3 to 5 days. And we had come and gone a couple of times, but by then Terry was there to stay. You know, she's going to live this with Rob in the hospital. That weekend, which was day 11 in the hospital, he had a blood transfusion. He was passing more blood than his body was reproducing. Then he had another Remicade, a booster. It should have been 2 to 4 weeks in between. It was 6 days later, got another dose of Remicade, trying to just hit this thing hard. And then that Tuesday, which was day 14 in the hospital, he had the deep pains in his stomach, which they knew could be a part of this ulcerative colitis. So after 14 days, the steroids weren't affecting him. The Remicade really never kicked in, and they said they're going to do an MRI and find out what's going on internally, which we were all, we're glad for that. Let's dig in deeper. But we prayed hard for a good MRI test, right? Let's get in there and find out that it's something simple. So Wednesday night they do the MRI, Thursday morning the radiologist reads it. Everything is good, the esophagus through the pelvis. They went through every organ, is good, except his large intestine, the colon. Not only is it inflamed, now it's starting to swell. And they started talking about surgery. And that shocked us that with a 21-year-old, they would remove his colon. And they talked about over the course of 3 years, remove his colon. People live healthy lives like that. He wears a bag for a little while. Maybe you take a part of his small intestine, make a new large intestine out of it. You take away the bag, it's like this is just too much for a 21-year-old who's supposed to be having fun in life. So that all hit us that Thursday. And then that's when he had a team of doctors that was coming in every day. They'd meet outside his door, talk, and then come in and give us their daily, what they were going to do. And that morning, this Dr. Campbell, who had been with Rob since the day he got admitted, said, I don't know if we were going to church. By then we were going to church every day at Holy Name Cathedral in Chicago. And she says, I'm not sure if you are people of faith or not, but now would be a good time to start praying. And this is a hospital doctor in a hospital setting giving us that advice. And I know that we were either, that was about noon, and we were either going to 12:10 Mass or had just gotten back from 10 a.m. Mass that morning. So again, they gave us those MRI results. His colon is swelling, which now we're going to do another colonoscopy. Go inside and look and see what we can see. And that was going to be Friday, the next day. So now it's a waiting game again and wait for the colonoscopy. This is day 17 in the hospital. He had been on IV steroids now for 17 days. And he told us the first day, 3 to 5 days, no more than 10 on IV steroids. It's a higher potency. Then it starts to affect your kidneys and liver. It's now day 17 and they're trying to get on top of this. On that Friday, Father Ron calls us. And it was a pretty neat story. Terry had called Father Ron and just left a message, said, pray for our son Rob, going through some health issues. And about 1 o'clock he calls, and we put him on speakerphone, and he leads us in prayer, me and Terry and Rob, over the speakerphone. And this is just a magical moment at the end. Terry said, well, Father Ron, how did you get my cell phone number? And Father Ron says, I used caller ID. just magical. Yeah, praise the Lord. So, But that was just the start of the prayers. That was the Friday afternoon. By Friday night, he had his colonoscopy, and we were going to get immediate results. And we told our family what was going on. The team of doctors came in the room, and we knew the way they walked in, it was not going to be good. They said, they went through his colon, and if you ever seen those, they get pictures, right? 25 pictures every 6 inches. And they said it's not good. Every time they touched the inner walls of his colon, it would bleed. They called it, and this is the words that we don't want to hear, they said a Remicade fail, which we knew that was the last proven drug. They talked about other drugs that are in clinical trials, but would not recommend them. And when they said Remicade fail, we knew what that meant, and they immediately said it's going to be surgery Monday at 1:30. We'll take his colon out. And we talked about a second opinion, and they supported it, and they said, let's go to Mayo. And I'm thinking we're going to put him in a car on Monday and drive him, and they said, no, it's going to be an inter-hospital transfer. And maybe Terry and Rob get a helicopter ride. So that the whole talk about going with a second opinion, when you're going to take someone's colon, if I'm 61, okay. When I'm 21, let's talk about this. And what was going through our minds was, I had Googled GI specialists, and Madison is in the top 50. A lot of respect for UW-Madison. Northwestern's in the top 25. So these people are good. They're not a bunch of hicks. They know what they're talking about. And I thought if we go to Mayo, they're likely going to say the same thing. So I always thought that if they're recommending this, we trust them. So Friday night was a long night. We had been staying either at his apartment, or my niece, Kaylin Mahoney, has an apartment right downtown Chicago. We'd stay there long enough until we'd outstay our welcome and go to the other spot. But that Friday night, we left Rob, and he was tearing up a little bit because he had just got that news, and he's faced with probably a major surgery on Monday or going to Mayo. Saturday morning, we walk in, and what we would do is get up early and walk the 2 miles, did a lot of walking, and we'd always kind of tiptoe into his room and see how he did. And sure enough, Saturday morning, this is day 18 in the hospital. Every morning he'd get his blood work, they'd put him on the scale, and we were there when the nurse was there, and he weighed in at 59.0 kilograms, which, I do the quick math on my phone, 2.2 pounds per kilogram, 129.8 pounds. So he lost another 18 pounds in the hospital, plus the 12 before. He's down 30. Not keeping food down. So that morning was pretty quiet, just waiting for the day's events. And what had happened was, that's the first day that 2 of his buddies, he was in constant contact with his friends, but he kept saying 3 to 5 days I'm going to be home. 3 to 5 days. So I think people wanted to come down, but kept hearing he's going to be home. Finally, Taylor Hermes and Tyler Minton say they're going to road trip it down Chicago. On that Saturday morning, Rob had just had that bad news. We're going to wait out the weekend. And those guys walked in, Melissa. They picked up our daughter Melissa, brought her down. And at 12:30, when they walked in that Saturday, I remember Tyler was in first, and he said, "Where's Rob?" He was in the bathroom again. Classic, His buddies show up, and another day, he was in the bathroom, and it's a small hospital room. You hear what's going on in the bathroom. And that was at 12:30, and it just, that was kind of a key moment, because he had been going, we're counting 10, 11, 12 diarrheas a day, eat, and then 20 minutes to an hour later throw up. They just could not keep food down. So we were marking it down, and 12:30, his buddies show up, he's in the bathroom. By 1:30, Father Bill Moriarty, and Terry will elaborate on him, he shows up and is going to do a healing prayer and a sacrament anointing of the sick. And he does an awesome prayer at 1:30, and all of a sudden by 3 o'clock, Terry's brother Tim and Lisa and Deb, her sister, and Mom Carol come in at 3. And we're talking, and then by 4 o'clock, the surgeon comes in, and he's talking about the next steps. and here's where we're gonna cut, and he brings in 2 of the colostomy bags, and you can have this version, you can have that version. You know, and they're working on the data that they had. They knew that Friday, the night before, his colon was sick, bleeding, and situation normal. Everything is going, you know, the same. And then by 6 o'clock, the surgeon leaves, and Rob's hospital food shows up, and we decide that we're going to go out to eat. We, you know, try to give Rob his space, let him eat, and we give him a lot of time on his own there. Really cute nurses. And so we go out to eat, and Tim and Leon, we said, you got a 4-hour drive home, get on the road. Nope, we're going to stay, we're going to go out to eat. So we just go to a little corner bar, and we're eating, and again, Rob has his hospital food, and it dawned on both of us that Rob went at 12:30. We didn't see him go again that afternoon. But he had family, he had friends, a lot of activity, a lot of prayer. Thank you. And before we went out to eat, we did another rosary. And Terry tried to lead it and didn't get through it, and Carol stepped in and finished it. And what a really neat part of this was I was next to Taylor Hermes, and I need the book, right? When they lead the rosary, I got to read it. I don't have it memorized. Taylor, and I like to say it about a split second behind everybody. That way I can act like I have it memorized. But Taylor was leading it, and without the book. And I said, wow, kids are a lot better than we were, than I was, I should speak for myself. But he said the rosary from his heart, from his mind. We all did, and then we went to dinner, left Rob to eat his hospital food, and at about 8 o'clock that night, we're in this bar, and Terry gets a text. And it's from Rob. He just went to the bathroom and took a picture of it. And it was solid. And frame it. And this is not a pretty part. We've been talking to the nurses. It's a cloudy. No, they wanted his frequency of going down to 3 to 4. He's up at 9, 10, 11 a day. They wanted no blood. He's passing blood. They wanted formation. It was liquid. Forget the fourth one. No, they want him to be able to control it and not have to run to the bathroom. Those are the 4 things he needed to do to get out of the hospital. Hadn't achieved any of them after 18 days. So that 8 o'clock at night, we get a text, and it's partially solid. And he says the first time in 9 weeks that he's been able to do that. So we're thinking we don't know. Okay, something maybe is changing. So we go back to the room, Tim and Lisa and Deb and Carol got on the road. We went up. He had changed. When we walked in, he was watching SpongeBob SquarePants, the movie, and he looked better. As a matter of fact, we brought leftovers. He ate the leftovers. Never lost his appetite through this whole thing, but usually he knows what happens when he eats. He's going to go right to the bathroom. So we talked that night. We went to Kaylin's apartment, came back in Sunday morning not knowing what we're going to find. Because was it just one night, the hospital had already transferred his records. On Monday, they're going to move him to Mayo, or we're going to do surgery there. It was up to us. And so that Sunday morning, we walk in, and he says, I'm 95%. And he said, matter of fact, after you left, the nurses heated up 2 more Spanish hamburgers for me. And that morning, he gained 1¼ pounds. Yeah, he's hungry. And that's the first day in 18 days he actually put weight on. So Sunday was a great day. We went to Mass. And the homily, the gospel was the parable of the sower, and then I know the homily was about discipleship. And every time we went, the messages were always clear. So we heard about discipleship. Rob had a good day Sunday. Again, we go out to eat on our own. We bring him back leftovers. He eats our leftovers. Monday morning, we go in, and now the GI doctors are back. They were there Friday night, gave us a story. They left. They put interns checking them on the weekend. Monday morning, they're back. And Dr. Kevin Liu, and again, they'd meet outside the room and come in sometime between 7 or 8 in the morning, and we'd always try and get there to be there with the doctors. And Kevin says, wow, you're having a good day. And he says, we don't know what happened. And that was his medical statement. We don't know what happened. And I even kind of poked at it a little bit. I thought, is Rob faking because he doesn't want surgery? He's making himself feel good. And he said, no, they've been checking his blood every day, and there's a C-reactive protein. It's a measure of your inflammation. When he came in, it was 20. They stabilized him at 8. Normal is 0 to 0.5. So he had never gotten below 8, and that was leading him to know that there's a lot of inflammation going on. And Kevin says, we looked at his blood work from Sunday, he was down to a 1.8. Today, he's almost perfect. So his statement was, we don't know what happened. But we're going to get him off of these IV steroids, get him onto some oral steroids, a lower dose. Now we got to make sure he doesn't flare up. So it's 3 to 5 more days. And for the first time, we saw the light at the end of the tunnel. By then it was day 20 in the hospital. This is all supposed to be over in 3 to 5 days from late June. By that Wednesday, he's continuing to be 95%, gaining a pound a day. Dr. Wabash, another one of the GI team, comes in Wednesday. I wasn't there, I was doing some work in the lobby, and Terry and Rob were there, and she says, we can't explain what happened. You know, they're a teaching hospital, and I think all hospitals would do the same thing, try to figure out what happened. She said, we can't explain it. Friday night, they all saw the colonoscopy, they were there. They saw his results. They know that he was passing blood, going 9, 10, 11, 12 times a day, throwing up. He was done with that. 3 to 4 times a day, like normal, starting to get formation. He stopped throwing up, I think Saturday morning, he was done. And he said, we can't explain it. And that was, again, her medical advice, I guess. And then sure enough, the next day, after 24 days in the hospital, he was discharged. And today has his issues. You know, there's other folks that have that, and it's a new normal. But I just want to give a couple of my observations, and then Terry's going to go back and fill in a lot of gaps. This Dr. Wabash, when we're driving home, Rob looked her up on Facebook, and she was a Harvard undergraduate, Loyola School of Medicine, Northwestern residency, and was now a fellow. And she's the one that said, we can't, she's trying to explain this. And she says, we can't explain it. And I look back, you know, and that turning point was the phone calls, the emails, the texts. In 1:30, the anointing of the sick. Now something happened at that point on Saturday. And we realized this never was our time, it was God's time. We prayed for a good MRI that never happened. We prayed for a good colonoscopy that never happened. And really on Saturday, it was probably the last chance for him to turn the corner to give the doctors enough confidence to not do surgery on Monday. That was but by then we had, I don't think we gave up, we kind of let go and said, we're in the system, whatever happens. Well, that's when it turns. And the other day I was just Resisting Happiness by Matthew Kelly, flipping through this book, and kind of caught me off guard. Planning is good and necessary up to a point, but we find God in the now. God lives in the eternal now. He is constantly inviting us to immerse ourselves in the present moment so we can be with Him. That God's now was Saturday. We had a timeline, but God never had a timeline. He fixed them, in our opinion, at the right time. Okay, Terry.
I think he covered it all. I don't think I need to talk. So, yeah, we went there for the day, we thought, on June 27th. Ended up I came home on July 4th to take a break because I needed some clothes. And I needed some clothes and just to regroup. So I came home Tuesday night, July 4th. That was the first day of his Remicade treatment. And since it took 3 to 5 days to kick in, I thought it would be a good time to come home because it's just a waiting period. But then the next day, Wednesday, I got a text from him, and he said the doctors were in and they kind of mentioned surgery about, that maybe my colon will have to be removed. I thought, oh my gosh, I can't be away. I need to get back there. So I thought I better grab some prayer books because I think we need to start praying. So Dan pretty much covered it all, but I will lead you, I'll show you how we prayed the rosary. Sometimes you get lost in thought. We're sinners, I get lost in thought praying the rosary. So I grabbed this old rosary book from my home, and we started, when we got to the hospital, July 5th, we started to pray the daily rosary. And this is how we prayed it. I'm just going to go through like the joyful mystery, and we immersed our own life and our own selves into the mystery. So the first joyful mystery, the Annunciation. The angel Gabriel said, "Do not be afraid, Mary. You have found favor with God. You will conceive and bear a son, and you shall call him Jesus." But she was not afraid, even though she did not fully understand it. Mary believed God's purpose for her, even though she did not always understand. Rob said he would accept it. He wasn't afraid or upset, even though he didn't understand. In fact, he said, "I'll take one for the family." The second joyful mystery, Mary visited her cousin, Elizabeth. A simple visit, yet blessings are exchanged and the two strengthened by God's grace. Two of Rob's friends, Mary Hermas's son Taylor and Tyler Mitten, chose to give him a call in the darkest time on that Friday night when there was nothing else left but to do surgery. Tyler dared to call Rob and say, "Hey, I think it's time for a visit." So they took the 4-hour drive, which was so heartfelt. They took the 4-hour drive to go see Rob, along with Melissa. And then later, Tim and Lisa, Deb and my mom came, and Lisa came with Spanish hamburger and cheesy potatoes. These simple visits were such blessings to us. The day after we found out Rob needs his colon removed. And I have to mention too, that talking on the phone with my sister-in-law, Sherry, and Becky, those were blessings too, because Sherry told her story of her son Greg over the phone with me 20 years ago when he had a fungal infection and things weren't getting better. Things kept getting worse and worse, and she finally said, "I need to do something. I can't depend on the doctors anymore." And she ended up getting Father Jim to do anointing of the sick, and Greg was healed. He just was healed after that. And Sherry said she continues to thank Father Jim for that moment, and Father Jim said it wasn't me, it was through me that healed him. So blessings, that's one thing that I took away from this, is the blessings of people and the visits and the talking with people. And I also want to mention Becky too. She said, don't do it. Don't have them remove his colon because he'll never get it back. He'll never get it back again. And that just stuck in my mind. So we just applied how Mary visited Elizabeth and how visits are truly, truly blessings. The third joyful mystery, Mary gave birth to her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes. Jesus was born and Jesus was poor. Jesus welcomed people. He welcomed those who were possessed by demons, those haunted by fears. Jesus welcomed everyone. Even though we are sinners, our spirits were lifted and we felt our hearts soar when we prayed. Because we put our whole heart and soul into our prayer, that is where we find Jesus. The fourth joyful mystery. When the time came, they brought the child up to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. Waiting and praying for so long for Jesus to come. Waiting in the temple many years, they were hoping God's promises to their people would be fulfilled. Waiting for Rob to be healed, we waited. We waited with faith, hope, and love. Finding the child, the fifth joyful mystery, finding the child, Jesus in the temple. A special joy comes from seeing what we're anxious about turn out for the best. The joyful mysteries of the Rosary are about such joys. The joys that follow fear, sorrow, struggle, and uncertainty. The lesson is simple. God makes our hearts for joy and will not let us lose treasures that truly matter. Our joy comes from seeking Him. The joy is that his pain was gone, his swelling numbers went way down, and he felt great. The joy that comes from seeking and believing. And hope. Hope is Jesus. So this is how we prayed the Rosary every day while we were at the hospital.
I think you gotta tell the story about Father.
Father Bill, okay.
There's one last story.
Okay, so Friday, I think, was the day that I had talked to Sherry, and we're in this great big Northwestern hospital. It's like, how do we get a priest here? We called Father Ron that day. How do we get a priest to come and just make a miracle happen? So we contacted the chapel, and the chapel could get us to a Catholic priest. Unfortunately, Father Bill couldn't come until Saturday, so we had a seminarian come on Friday, and he was there in our room within 5 minutes after I made the call. And I was kind of disappointed because I wanted the anointing of the sick on Friday before we got the results of the colonoscopy, because I was really hoping for a miracle. But the seminarian came, and he was happy, and he was young, and he came and he said, we don't know each other, but isn't it just the neatest thing that we can hold hands together and pray prayers that we all know, and we can feel comfortable praying these prayers with each other. So we spent some time with the seminarian, who was awesome. So we prayed the Hail Mary, the Our Father, and the Glory Be, and it just felt good. It felt very refreshing. So then the chapel called and said, Father Bill, a priest can't come until Saturday afternoon at 1:30. And I'm thinking, darn it, you know, the colonoscopy, the results are going to be in, and shoot, but we'll take them. We'll take them anyways. So Saturday, that was at 1:30, so Tyler Minton and Taylor Hermes were already there. And I warned them, I'm like, just so you know, Father Bill Moriarty is going to come and do an anointing of the sick, but I want you guys to stay and pray with us. So we were waiting for him, and I thought, I'm going to just step out of the room for a minute. Well, I stepped out of the room, and this big guy was just cleaning his hands off, and I looked at him and I thought, oh my gosh, you're kind of old and you're crotchety, and who are you? And you have pointy ears and your eye is funny. And but come on in anyways. So this was Father Bill Moriarty, and he did this healing prayer, and it was with Tyler and Taylor and me and Dan and Melissa, and we all held hands, and it was spirit-filled. We had tears. He did an amazing job.
I believe that the phrase she said was, he's not who I ordered.
But so I'm a full sinner. But I just found this. This is James 5:14-15, and this comes from the Bible. Is anyone among you sick? let them call the elders of the church to pray over them and anoint them with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offered in faith will make the sick person well. The Lord will raise them up. If they have sinned, they will be forgiven. That was Father Bill Moriarty. And Sunday night, before the doctors came in and said his numbers look great, this is kind of freaky, but I'm just going to tell you anyways. I woke up in the morning and I said, Dan, this was really the first night that I couldn't really sleep really well at all. But all I kept seeing in my dreams was the face of Jesus in everybody that visited on Saturday. And Father Bill, like, it doesn't matter what you look like. all I saw was the souls of all these people, and Taylor and Tyler, 21 years old, praying with us and staying and smiling and bringing Rob for a walk. I mean, nobody can know how precious that was to us. And then my mom making the 4-hour trip just for the day to see her grandson. And then Deb, my sister Deb and Tim and Lisa, and they were happy, and I could see just the happy souls. I couldn't see their bodies, I could just see their happy souls. It was just the neatest thing. And then on Monday morning, when the doctor said, you know, his numbers are amazing, the swelling is down, I really believe that is what happened. Father Bill Moriarty, well, God, through Father Bill, helped heal Rob.
So today he's doing good. He's got a new normal. He's going to figure out what he can and can't eat, and he'll be on this Remicade medication for life. Every 6 or 8 weeks, they'll figure out what the dose is and the frequency, and they just said learn to schedule your family trips around his medication. And you know, I don't know that he was healed, but I think something allowed that medication to work, because it went for 18 days and not worked, and then it turned. So.
I always think it's through someone share a faith story, because we all have them, and we need to share those things, and that's how we find God around us. So right now we're going to take about a 10-minute break, and as you're getting whatever you're doing, take an opportunity to meet someone that isn't in your circle of friends. Just ask them how they are, what they're doing today, what brought them here. That's your challenge. So we'll be back in about 10 minutes.
I was the only one that was going to be talking about cheesy potatoes this morning. But I'm really happy to follow the Rhinebo talk this morning. So here we are at St. John's in Little Chute, a most beautiful church, getting a sound system update, and a wonderful morning for fall coffee. Thank you to the women who are hosting. So most of us in the room are probably from Little Chute or Kimberly, the Fox Valley area. And one thing that we probably all have in common is when something with our life or a friend's life or a family member's life goes a little off track, a little haywire, or really bad, what do? We bring them a casserole, right? We bring a cheesy potato dish, a taco bake, or an apple crisp, and everything's better. Just move on. So what do you do when faced with a situation when a casserole won't do? You become a prayer warrior. Matthew 21:22. And whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive if you have faith. Monday, September 18, 2017. I have a prayer request. I have been asked to give a talk about our prayer warrior group. Pray for me. Blessings, Sarah. I wrote that just about a week or so ago. I've been very fortunate to be a part of a small group of women named Prayer Warriors who came together about over a year ago with a common prayer goal, a singular purpose for our prayer. When we began, we didn't all know each other. We came from different faiths, but we had a mission. And our mission was to lift up one of our own private trouble in prayer for a duration of time, longer than we were able to supply casserole or apple crisp for. In today's world, technology can get a bad rap. But as a prayer warrior, we used it for the good, and quite honestly, a little bit of convenience. We started a group chat through text messaging. We organized ourselves by days. One person had Tuesday, I had Friday, two were assigned the weekend, and so on. And on that day, you sent a prayer. Simple as that. Any type of prayer, but a message to lift up that one common goal, that one common person's trouble that we were lifting up in prayer. February 3rd. Jesus, worthy is your name. May we call on you in time of rejoice and need. July 26th. Lord, as sickness has invaded a loved one, we stand by watching and feeling helpless. But Lord, I am reminded that I am not helpless, but powerful in prayer. March 14th. Jesus, today I was reminded once again how evil, anger, and bitterness can rob a person's soul. Tonight I pray for these people. January 13th. Let us take a moment today for prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven. And this is what we did. As a prayer warrior, we remained committed to our prayer purpose for months. And we saw glimpses of prayers answered for that trouble. But also, unexpectedly, as each ding came through on our phones, we found ourselves individually getting more out of our daily prayers in our own lives. Our conversations grew, and we found ourselves growing in faith, connecting as Jesus-loving women. Our group has continued to evolve, and we continue to use the convenience of technology and text messaging weekly. And we've kept our group to the original prayer warriors, but we now pray, reflect, inspire, motivate, and love each other for many, many other reasons. A niece with cancer, a child going off to college, losing a grandparent, losing a father-in-law, marriage, friendship, but also celebrating a struggling student's B+. Always aspiring to be strong, faith-filled women. Our reflections becoming just as important as our prayers. Blessings happening in disguise. March 19th. So thankful for this group. Amen to that. April 25th. Love your prayer today. I need to read this every day. June 26th. This is such a great reminder for young and old. Prayer Warrior Group has become a place to go, a place to pray and celebrate. We've all met now, and we're very informal. Some, like me, still have our Friday 8 a.m. prayer time, and others pray when moved by the Holy Spirit. But what started as a singular private trouble has developed a silver lining of powerful and practical and impactful prayer warrior group that each of us craves in a different way. Wednesday, September 27th, 2017. Rise up. Rise up and pray today. May you take notice of all the good God has created just for you. And this is what I encourage all of you to do. Rise up and ask someone to be a prayer warrior with you and watch all the blessings God has in store for you. But don't forget to drop off a casserole every once in a while. Thank you. go sit back down, I am going to plug Chirp Weekend. So Chirp Weekend is coming up very quickly.
She is wife to Saul Phillips, men's basketball coach at Ohio University, mother to Jordan, Charlie, and Ben, Miss Wisconsin 1997, former TV anchor and reporter in Milwaukee and Madison, breast cancer survivor, weekly columnist, author, and public speaker. Doesn't that make you tired? Her message is kindness. She challenges us to realize that our words and acts of kindness do make a difference. And it's my pleasure to introduce Nicole Phillips.
Formerly Nicole Losey, so Donna and I are related. There's a lot of Losies in the house today, so that's awesome. Can you hear me? Yes. Awesome, okay, thanks. I hate to drive. Does anybody else hate to drive? Given the opportunity to, oh yeah, hands up, I love it. Okay, given the opportunity to fly, I would rather spend 13 hours stranded in an airport than 13 hours in a car. It is terrible for me. I just absolutely have no patience for that. So, last Thursday, I drove an hour and a half from my home in Athens, Ohio to Columbus, Ohio. I parked my car. I got on an airplane. I sat in the airport for a while. I arrived here in the afternoon, picked up a rental car, and then Friday proceeded to drive 2.5 hours to Reedsburg. From Reedsburg, I drove another hour and a half and went over to the Madison area. Then the next day, I drove 2.5 hours and went to Viroqua. Then I drove 3+ hours to come back to Appleton. Tomorrow, I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to drive to Milwaukee. And then I'm going to drive back here and fly out of Appleton. So, I'm in the car with God, right? In the rental car with God. And I'm too cheap to pay the extra $5 for cruise control. So, at the rental place, they say, this car doesn't have cruise control. For an extra $5, we'll upgrade you. And I say, no. I'm on a budget. I get in the car and I immediately regret my decision not to have cruise control. I have AT&T cellular service. Wisconsin and AT&T don't get along, apparently, because every time I'm in my car and I want to talk to someone, AT&T says, this call has been dropped. So I've had about 14 partial conversations with people, including Jesse Hippis, who I was like, okay, when do I need to be there, and what order am I speaking, what do you want me to talk about, and all of this. Then, of course, I listen to the radio in my rental car while I'm driving all of these back roads, and I have, my favorite song will come on, and I am singing out loud, loving it, and then all of a sudden, and there goes my favorite song. I hit the scan button and it just continually repeats. Siri is a really good friend of mine. Does anyone know Siri? Okay, so Siri and I are like this. We are locked in. If I need to know where the closest Papa Murphy's Pizza is, Siri will tell me and she will take me there. Unless I'm in rural Wisconsin. Then I leave the place I was in Viroqua, and I was leaving Viroqua, and I was very confident, leaving my cousin Susie's house, that I would be able to find my way to Appleton. So I pull out of Susie's driveway, and I go down the street, and I realize I actually left the house, and I don't know where I'm going at all. Like, is it that way, or that way? Or that way, or could it be that way? So I talk to Siri. So I hit my phone. Hey Siri, take me to Appleton. Siri, take me to Appleton, Wisconsin. Siri, take me to Aunt Mary's house. Crickets. Siri says nothing. She's not even thinking. She has taken a nap and she is not waking up. She's asleep in the back of the boat. I stop at Quick Trip. I asked the lady at Quick Trip, I am going to Appleton. Do you have any way to get there? Do you have a map? Do you have anything? And she was like, Appleton, Appleton. I was in Appleton not too long ago. Just go to the street and then just take a right. Just take a right. And you'll be on this highway and you'll be fine. Okay. So, I get in the car and I start to drive and I take a right. Meanwhile, oh my gosh, God, you are too funny. You know what my phone says right now? Siri not available. That's funny. That's weird. So God has a sense of humor, yes. So I start driving, and about every 5 minutes, I say, Siri, take me to Appleton. Nothing. Siri, take me to Appleton. Nothing. Then I get Siri, and she kind of lights up, and I'm about the clouds part, hallelujah. And Siri tells me, in a half a mile, take a right on County J. And so I've got her, at least for a moment, I've got her. I pull over to the side of the road because I thought, you know what, I need to take pictures and make sure that while I've got connection, I can make sure I will have connection for the next road and the next road and the next road. Well, that didn't work so well because Siri didn't want to tell me what the next step was. She only wanted to tell me what this step was. So I took this step. And I'm praying to God, God, really, can we not just teleport? You know I love to speak. You know I hate to drive. Is there not a happy medium in here for me somewhere, God? God was quiet, just like Siri. And I started to think, you know, I'm hungry because I didn't have breakfast before I left. And I have to go potty because I am a 42-year-old woman and I have to do that every 10 minutes. I don't even know if I'm on the right path. And then I almost ran out of gas. My fault, I get it, my fault. Lots of situations in life that we find ourselves in are my fault, but we're still there. And then all of a sudden, I noticed a farm field off to the side, and it had very short grass and a creek running along through it. And it was beautiful, it was breathtaking, but what was special to me was that it reminded me of a creek that I used to play by when I was a kid. Then I was driving along a little bit more and I saw this beautiful apple stand, and these apples were gorgeous, and they had this sign and it said, "Smile more." Then I went past some adorable pumpkin patches. Then I went through some small towns, and there were high school kids out painting the storefronts for homecoming. That still happens? Yeah. That does not happen in my town in Ohio anymore. I noticed the old schoolhouses and the barns, and some of the barns you could just see the pride that these farmers and their families take in these farms because the barns are just beautiful, pristine. I noticed a sign for Circus World Museum. And that might not really matter because it's Wisconsin and it's Circus World Museum. But the last time I was at Circus World Museum, I was about 25 years old, and I was working in TV in Madison, and I went with my dad to Circus World Museum because I had to cover Circus World for a story. And my dad said, well, I'll go with you. I'll meet you there, it'll be fun. And we took a little road trip, just the two of us. I saw on the side of the road a very large mouse in a cowboy hat. Actually, multiple large mice in cowboy hats, generally pointing the way to the cheese hut that is right next to it. And there were sheep, and there were goats, and there were mules, and some of the most beautiful horses I've ever seen. And as I'm driving along, I drive past one of those farms, and the oddest thought comes into my head. I was thinking back to when I was Miss Wisconsin in 1997. I hadn't thought about that in a long time, and there was a girl who borrowed some of my dresses because she wanted to do pageants. She wanted to do it too. And so, I didn't need the dresses, so I lent them to her. And I thought to myself, I wonder where that girl is these days. It's kind of funny because with Facebook, I kind of pretty much can stay in touch with anybody, from... I am friends on Facebook with my kindergarten teacher, okay? Like, Facebook has a wide span. So I think about this girl and I think, isn't that funny that we lost touch back in about 1997, 20 years ago, and haven't thought of her since. Haven't seen her since. No idea where she is. But this farm, she grew up on a farm, and I wonder if the farm looked like this. If you ever wonder if God is with you, even in your thoughts, let me assure you the answer is yes. Because today I walked into this church and I set up my book stand over there, and a girl came up to me and she said, I don't know if you're going to remember me, but my name is Michelle. And chills ran through my entire body. Because that's the girl. She's here today. You want to wave, Michelle? She's embarrassed. She's crying and I'm crying. She's here today. And we haven't talked for 20 years. And in my thoughts, I thought about her and wondered about her and hoped that she was okay and doing well in whatever it was she was doing. And I've asked God over the past 3 days, God, you will show up in Little Shoe, right? If I show up, you will be there, right? And you know what God says to me? I am inside of you. Of course I'm going to be where you are. But I said, yeah, but you will, you'll speak through me. You'll do it for me, right? And then God gives me a tiny little token, a tiny little God wink. Had I teleported here, had I teleported across the state, I would have missed all those things. I would have missed the pumpkin patch. I would have missed the Smile More sign. I would have probably never thought about Michelle because I wouldn't have seen the farms. We ask God in our lives, get me through this, God. Move me past this. Teleport me to the next thing. I don't want to be in the midst of this pain. But in the midst of that pain is where you find God. In the midst of that pain are miracles, silver linings. And if He teleports us past that, just to the next point of joy, the next point of the great, worship song or whatever it is, the next happy moment, think of all you miss along the way. I was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago. Previous to that, my husband's a busy guy, right? He's a basketball coach, Division I college. I'm a mom, and I do some writing and speaking on the side. And we have 3 beautiful kids that are in every extracurricular activity you could ever imagine. And so life got really hectic and busy in our household. And my husband kind of did his thing over here. And I kind of did my thing over here. And once in a while, when it came to the kids, we would collide in the middle. And then I was diagnosed with cancer. I could have prayed, God, take this away from me right now. God, make this go away. God, lead me to the happily ever after. Lead me to the ending. But had He done that, I would have never known that my husband, who loves basketball more than anything in the whole wide world, loves his wife more. Because he gave up a lot of basketball to sit next to me in our bed as I was laying there and recovering from surgery. There was a college professor who had a large room, a lecture hall, filled with students. And he had a piece of paper in front of each student as they came and they sat down. And it looked like this. White piece of paper, dot in the middle. Now this college professor's dot was black. I don't know if you can see it back there, mine's blue, because that's all Father could show me for the markers. He said I would have to go talk to the office clerical staff if I really needed a black one. I said, no, blue will be fine. So this college professor had this piece of paper sitting there in front of 500 students in his lecture hall. And he said, here is your assignment. I want you to write what you see. They did a timed writing. The professor collected all of those. And he went through them one by one by one by one by one. Every single one of those students wrote about the dot. Not one of them wrote about the white space. In our lives, we all have a black dot. We all have that one thing that just catches us, that we fixate on, because that's the problem. That's the problem area. That's the trouble. So I wanted to talk to you today about perspective, and how if we can shift our perspective off of the black dot and start noticing the white space. What could we do with that white space? Why didn't anyone in that classroom write, you know, there's a black dot in the paper, sure, but look at all this white space that I have that I could draw on, that I could doodle on. I could do anything with this white space. And in our lives, it's the same way. Now, I like to talk about kindness. So we think if we are fixated on the black dot or the white space, or our perspective skews toward the negative, what does that have to do with kindness? The white space is the area where kindness can live. Because when we can get our minds off of ourselves and turn them onto the needs of others, God can walk into that space and bless us as we're blessing others. Kindness is like a secret passageway. Let's say you're in this beautiful garden. Flowers growing all up on the shrubs, and everything is green, magical green colors. And you take a step into it, because let's say you say you're going to go in there and you're going to weed in that area. You're going to be helpful in that area, right? So you walk through that passageway and you start weeding anything that looks like it shouldn't be there, because you're being the helpful one. You're doing the act of kindness. But then you realize that God is sitting there next to you. And God said, hey, while you're weeding, why don't you tell me about what's going on in your heart? Why don't you tell me about what's troubling you? Why don't you let me show you some of the miracles I have yet in store for your life? And so you take this step into this secret passageway thinking you're going to be kind to someone else. But what you find is that you are the one who ends up being blessed with that kindness. I'm going to come back and talk at the parish mission about some really specific things. And this is going to be next February. And the parish mission is going to be, come follow me. So, come follow me in your thoughts. Come follow me in your actions. Come follow me in your heart. How to get closer to God in that. But I want to challenge all of you now in preparation for February to start thinking about what you're thinking about. Because we can get wrapped up in negative thoughts. So for instance, we can say, you know, I'm not going to go to that prayer breakfast thing. I'm not going to go to that coffee thing because, you know, I don't know, like, I'll probably be, if you're a man, I'll probably be the only man here and I don't want to do that. Or if you're a woman, well, I don't want to go because I was going to lose 20 pounds by this month and I did not lose 20 pounds and everybody knows I was trying to, so now I don't want to go. Do you ever do that to yourself? So, you start playing these sorts of thoughts in your mind. That's what you're thinking. But do you ever stop and think about, I'm thinking this. I'm thinking this thought, and I am going to stop myself from experiencing the fullness of life because I'm thinking negative thoughts. Now, I'll be honest. Sometimes I think negative thoughts about myself, but sometimes I think negative thoughts about others. And I feel like the first step toward kindness, really all-inclusive kindness in your body, is to acknowledge the fact that you're thinking things that you probably shouldn't be thinking, either about yourself or about someone else. So, as you're spending the next few months thinking about what you're thinking about, I want to give you a tip. When you find yourself picking on yourself or someone else in your mind, I want you to say to yourself, I reject that thought. Because we have an enemy. And if that enemy can get into your brain and he can tell you how you are not worth it, you are not worthy, you will never get to where you want to be, or that you're alone and God really doesn't care about the details of your life, then the enemy can drag you down. If the enemy can get you to look at that black dot and fixate on that black dot, whatever it is, if it's a health issue or if you're worried about a daughter-in-law or you're really feeling like, you know, your husband is doing something he shouldn't be doing, like leaving his socks on the floor, and that just drives you insane. If the enemy can get you thinking about that and wondering and worrying and getting wrapped up in that, then you don't have any time to be talking to God because your thoughts are already wrapped up in a conversation with the enemy. So, when you feel yourself thinking bad thoughts about yourself or anyone else, the first thing you do is you say, I reject that thought. And then you replace it with another thought. Because if you've ever tried to think two thoughts at one time, it's not all that easy. Let's go on a vacation together, shall we? Let's go to a beach, all right? Close your eyes. I'm going to take you to a beach. It's going to be awesome. And you're on that beach, and the sun is coming down. It's nice and warm, and you can feel the sand in your fingertips and your toes, and you can smell the copper tone. It smells so coconutty. You can hear the waves crashing against the shore. And just relax there. Just be there. Maybe you even have a fruity drink in your hand, and you can feel the cold perspiration of it on your hand. And as you lay on the beach, I want you to think of the top 5 things you need to buy at the grocery store. You're no longer on the beach, are you? You're standing there next to the milk at the Piggly Wiggly. So the same thing goes that way when we're talking about, you know, just hypothetical situations. But real life situations work the same way. When you find yourself picking on yourself, when you find yourself thinking, why would that woman wear that outfit? How is she parenting her kids like that? Doesn't she know they need a little more discipline than that? When those things start rolling through your head, I reject those thoughts and then you replace them. And what you replace them with is your homework, right? You can find a favorite quote that you don't quite have memorized. You can find a list of wonderful attributes that you wish you had. Make up your own list. And I want you to write it down and put it in your pocket. Because when I started doing this, when I started to get really serious about capturing my thoughts, taking my thoughts captive, I wrote down love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, the fruit of the Spirit. I didn't have them memorized. I actually didn't know that there was an adorable little song that will help you memorize them. So instead, I wrote them down on a piece of paper and I put them in my pocket. And every time I would think to myself, I can't do that. I'm too slow for that. I'm not smart enough for that. I'm too fat for that. I'd pull out that piece of paper. I would say, I reject that thought. And then I would start reading love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. Until eventually, I had it memorized. But in that process of memorization, the other thought, whatever the thought was gone. Because I had replaced it with something better. So I want you to think about what you're thinking about. And if you don't like what's going through your mind, then I want you to work really hard on rejecting it and saying, no. No, devil, you don't get to tell me what I'm going to think about things anymore. God tells me what I'm going to think about. And you know what God says about that? From 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 18. In every situation, no matter what the circumstances, be thankful and continually give thanks to God, for this is the will of God for you in Christ Jesus. God wants you to go on that road trip with Him. He doesn't want to teleport you, but He wants you to get out of your own mind long enough to see all of the precious miracles He has left along the way for you every day. And I hope that when you lay your head on your pillow at night, you'll take just a tiny bit of time to think about the miracle that God gave you that day. Because regardless of your situation, regardless of what's happening with your son or your husband or my father, regardless, God has blessed you that day with a miracle. Let's get out of our own heads long enough to see it. God bless you all. Thank you for having me here today.